How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk, and we're going to spend today talking about music production as we always do, all those things, the creativity, the gear, the fun and frustration of it all. There's plenty of both, I'd say. Today, I have a very special guest, Remute, whose real name is Denis Karimani. Denis, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me on the show, and looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, I'm really happy to get a chance to talk to you. Your work as Remute has got on my radar as as someone who grew up playing video games. The Techno Optimistic album is a super cool idea.
Okay, very good to hear. I think that was my intention to reach out to video game fans and music fans at the same time. So I guess I've managed that somehow.
You have. And for people listening, this is probably going to be the first album you could ever get that you can play on your Sega Genesis or your Sega MegaDrive if you're
Right.
in Europe.
So dust them off.
Yeah, so dust off your old console, dig it out of the attic, and
Yeah.
put the new Remute album in there.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible idea. I definitely want to get into how you even came to that, how you would even
Okay.
program that music. But maybe if you don't mind, if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about your background as a musician and how you wound up to this very interesting stage of your career.
Sure. I've started making music around 2002. Put out my first record in 2002. It was called Hypno Console. And I've always been into sampling video games, but as I said, I just sampled the video games. I just used some sound effects. I just recorded some sounds from the consoles. But in my early stage of my career, I've never been able to make the music on the game console itself. I've started I've started with common music gear like Akai MPC or Yamaha SU700, stuff that was around 2000, and that was very common. So then step by step, I've put out my first album in 2006 on a very high-profile German techno label called Ladomat 2000, and it was really kind of breakthrough for me, and that was kind of turning point. I was able to live from my music from then on. And I was fresh out of school and fresh out of university. I've decided against a career of being a lawyer. I've went to become a techno musician.
You chose the hard way.
Just the hard way. Well, it was really kind of either I become a lawyer or a techno star. So I've chosen to become techno star. Okay, so but everything came step by step, and it really took me years before I was even able to live from my music and have gigs and being a professional. So let's say I think it took around 4 years for me to break through, and seems a pretty long time for some aspiring producers of today, because I've noticed that a lot of producers of today are trying to become rich and famous within 3 months or 3 weeks. But my experience was the other way around. It took very long, and it was kind of hard, and but it was worth it. And so in 2008, I was able to start my own label called Remute, like my name Remute. And that was very important for me, because from then on I was able to put out music that just 100% me. I didn't have to make some compromises like before. The labels I've worked with them before always forced me to cut some things out or leave some things out or change some things, and I was really fed up with this. So I've started my own label in 2008, and I think since then I'm putting out music that I really like, and fortunately a lot of people also like.
Yeah.
So well, then a couple of years I've put out a lot of records. My tune Zündli was a very big hit in the minimal techno era around 2008, 2009, 2009. And well, that was a very huge hit for me that got me on the bill of a lot of festivals over here in Europe, and played a lot live, and I was touring a lot as a live act from then.
Mm.
Well, I think um, I had a quite normal techno career till 2017. Actually, I've put out a lot of records. I've put out a lot of digital releases. I've played a lot of techno festivals, and well, I'm still a techno act, but I think in 2017 was another turning point for me, because I was again really fed up with all the maximality in my scene,
Mm.
like sample libraries of 60 gigabytes, or huge modular systems around $40,000 to create a single clap sound or something like that. I've heard a lot of crazy stories from friends with huge studios who had millions of gear, but didn't were able to come up with something substantial. And so in 2017, I was really fed up with maximality, and I thought I have to make something really minimal again, but not like during the minimal techno era, but
Mhm.
literally minimal, like minimizing file sizes, for example.
Right.
And that led me to my album Limited, which came out in 2017, and it was released on a floppy disk, 3.5 inch floppy disk. Yeah. So for this, I was really using minimalism in a literal way. I was compressing my music into a minimum, and I was able to fit this all on a floppy disk. And I think this was a very important step for me to feel to free my creativity again, because I was kind of lost in all the possibilities I've built throughout my years. And myself, I've bought a lot of gear, I've bought a lot of software, and also have a huge studio, but I was really lost. Yeah.
Mm.
After years of making techno music. And so in 2017 was another turning point by getting really minimal on a floppy disk. Yeah. So this was a very important album, which got featured even by Los Angeles Times. I've been there at their Festival of Books and had the talk about how releasing music at floppy disks. This was really fascinating for me, talking to people who just who don't even know what a floppy disk is. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I don't think this is a medium that is still common. And but somehow I've managed to reintroduce this medium as a techno medium, and it works because I think the raw sound that the floppy disk provides really fits to my music I've made right now. And well, this album Limited led to my new album Techno Optimistic, which came out this year in March. And for this, I've took the minimalism even a step further. So I've used an old game cartridge as a format. Yeah, this is a very, very limited format because it has very, very little file storage space. And so for this album, I was forced to not record my music anymore, actually,
Hmm.
but to program it. So I guess Techno Optimistic was the album that finally turned me into a music programmer from a
Yeah.
musician. And I don't know. Is this the end of the road, or we'll see.
Right.
So this was kind of my career in a kind of short short talk.
I love it. It's a great story, and I definitely understand why you created your own record label. I could only
Yeah,
imagine
yeah,
what the
because
executives at a label would say when you want to release your album on a
yeah,
floppy
yeah,
disk.
yeah. Executives were freaking out, but
Yeah.
I was getting used to it.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, that you can have that kind of freedom. What is the size limitation on a floppy disk?
On a floppy disk, you have 1.44 megabytes. This is actually less than a selfie on Instagram.
Oh
There's
my
more.
God.
And in order to squeeze the music into this little file storage space, you have to use some kind of ancient techniques and ancient file formats like the mod format. This is a format that has its roots on 80s and 90s home computers like the Commodore Amiga
Hmm.
computer. And this is a kind of, I always describe this kind of format as a mixture of MIDI and audio file because it's like a little sampler. You have
Hmm.
your you have your little samples, very compressed, very lo-fi, and you have a musical sequence program into the file. And this file plays the samples in real time. The You program the file and it tells the computer how to play the samples. So the music gets generated in real time.
Oh, okay.
Um, this this way it is possible to squeeze music on a floppy disk. To squeeze even around 10 tracks onto 1.44 megabyte without even noticing less quality than an MP3 file, for example. Sure, it is quite lo-fi, it is quite raw, it is very electronic sounding techno music, but it's not. It doesn't sound as bad as a badly compressed MP3.
Yeah.
It's more like yeah, it still sounds listenable.
Right. Well, that was
Yeah,
what I was kind of wondering because, like, to put a whole album in 1 point, I forget the exact number you
yeah,
said, but um,
4 megabyte. Yeah,
it's. I mean, I remember using floppy disks, and I would fill those up with like
yeah,
just a few enough Microsoft Word documents. Which
yeah.
now, I
Right,
mean,
right.
that you feel you can just have as many as you want, and you'll never have enough. You'll never run out of storage.
That's
So
right. That's right.
I was surprised at how good it sounded because I was thinking maybe what you were doing was taking that whole album and just compressing that MP3 down to the some kind of ridiculously small bit rate.
Right, right. I never wanted to just compress MP3 files
Hmm.
because I think all the punch and all the sonic pleasure of my music would get lost this way.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to go the real time music route, and
Mm.
that's why I've used this format mod. Yeah,
Yeah, that's super cool. So I'm guessing you're probably like reusing a lot of the samples and a lot of different tracks, and they're just playing back
right,
differently.
right,
Hmm.
right. The special thing about the mod file is you have only 4 tracks. Yeah, only 4 tracks,
Hmm.
and you have to work only with 4 tracks and put all the samples onto 4 tracks. But of course, you can use tricks like resampling and some other tricks like manipulating some samples in real time via some effect programs. But you have to use a lot of tricks to make this sounds good. But it is a challenge, and I like the challenge with making music.
So you're probably doing like we would do on a tape machine, a 4 track tape where you record, say, the 3 tracks onto the four
Yeah,
track. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, right. So you can, yeah, this is a good description. It's like a
Mhm.
four track tape and with an embedded code. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how much time in samples you have on that one particular album that's being played back? Is there like, like a certain
Mm,
number of seconds or a minute
mm, mm.
of actual music that's then being like repurposed throughout the album?
Let me guess. It's really not much. It's really just a few seconds of
Yeah.
sampling time. You can, even if you save the samples in 8-bit and mono and 22 kilohertz, but I think there, even if the music, if the total running time is probably 35 minutes, I think the whole sampling data is just a minute probably
Right.
in total. And because because the because you have so less sampling time, you have to use a lot of tricks to make it sound
Hmm.
rich. And this is a kind of minimalism that fascinates me. That to squeeze out the maximum of nothing, almost
Yeah.
nothing. And this is a challenge I always like to accept.
Yeah, you would be like the anti-advertiser for like every company putting out sample packs.
That's right. I think all the sample pack companies hate me. Absolutely.
This whole album is made with just a few seconds of sound.
Just a few seconds. Just a few
I
seconds. Right.
think I have like clap samples, like you said, that are longer than that amount of.
Yeah,
They couldn't
yeah.
even fit on the floppy disk. Just one
That's
sample.
right. That's right. I got one once. I got a remix from. I got some remix files from another artist. I think I don't tell the name, but I got a single file consisting of a single clap sound, and the clap sound was only heard once in this track, in the 6-minute track. And the file he gave me was in 24-bit, 96 kilohertz, of course, very high res.
Yeah.
And the file was around 4 gigabytes for one single clap sound.
Gigabytes. Oh my God.
Gigabytes, yeah.
Oh.
And well, I had to download it here in Germany. We still don't have fast internet. We have only like 1 megabyte per second. It's like Stone Age in the internet here.
Huh.
And it took me really some hours to download this clap sound. And yeah, that was one of the points that led me to limit it to the album.
Yeah. I guess
So
the
actually,
payoff isn't there.
I have to thank this artist for giving me
There
such
you
a
go.
huge, because it led to my album, and it was so crazy.
Oh, that's so funny. So I can remember, I guess like I first started using like computer-based music in about 2005. I've played in like rock bands since I was a
Yeah.
teenager in the 90s.
Yeah.
But the selling point was like, look at how big this sample library is. That was like, oh wow,
That's
this
right.
is really
That's right. That's
exciting.
right.
But now I
Yeah.
find myself, I'm not quite where you are yet, but I
Yeah.
do. The larger the something is, I'm like, oh, I don't want it that much stuff. It's because it's just we have so much as it is already,
That's
and
right. That's right.
to keep adding this stuff, I'm really what I tell people as I teach or when I work with them, or even I try to remind myself, I think that the real challenge for the modern music producer is dealing with endless options.
That's right. That's totally right. You're absolutely right, because actually I feel the same way. When I started making music, um, I started making music as a kid with 12 or 13 years old, and this was the time of Pentium 1 and Pentium 2,
Hmm.
100 megahertz and 16 megabytes of RAM,
Yeah,
And this time, the possibilities were very limited, and back then I wished always for more. I
yeah,
always wanted to get more possibilities, but now it's the other way around. I get lost in possibilities and searching some ways to work my way around limitations, because I think the possibilities are just too much. You get drowned in
yeah,
possibilities, and well, it's really the challenge to not get drowned in possibilities.
yeah. When I had just my cassette 4-track recorder, a microphone, and a guitar, I made
Yeah,
much more music. Like every time I sat down, I made a whole song,
yeah,
just because I
yeah.
didn't
I
have the
think
choice. There was no other
Yeah,
option.
I think a great part of making music or making art or other art is the way you make it, the
Hmm.
way you can come up with with an idea. And you always back then I always had to think about how to make this, and I have to be inventive, and I think this helped a lot to be limited
Mm.
somehow. It sounds crazy, but I really enjoyed to be. I still enjoyed to be limited.
Yeah, I think some of my favorite music making experiences of the recent past were very limited stuff.
Yeah.
I have the Teenage Engineering OP1,
Okay. Yeah.
which is super powerful, really. But it gets kind of sometimes people hate on it because it's not as powerful as your DAW. Um, but one of the features that it has is that 4-track tape recorder. And I like
Yeah.
just plugging a mic into that thing and just using it like the old school tape recorder. I just have such a good time with
Yeah.
it because it's this one little thing with a headphone and a microphone, and I can walk around wherever I am. And
Yeah.
the options are small, and it's just your creative energy runs out so fast when you start saying like, all right, what am I going to do? Let's listen to the 900 kick drum, 9,000 kick drums I have, find the best one.
That's the thing. That's the thing that kills creativity, really, because after when you have such huge possibilities, you spend so much time on exploring these possibilities
Yeah.
and listening to all these kicks and all these samples and all these things you can do, but you end up not doing them.
Right. Yeah, I think like by definition, creativity is solving a problem within a limited, set of options. And now we have infinite options. So you're really not being creative when you're just hunting down out of all 8
Yeah,
billion hi-hats you
yeah,
have.
that's right.
You're
So,
just,
don't get me wrong. I really like modern gear. I really
mhm.
like modern software. I like the convenience of the modern software, and it's really indefinitely much better to use modern software and modern hardware today. Uh, uh, but I like modern hardware to have some kind of old school aspect. Like you really mentioned the OP1 before with the tape recorder.
Mhm.
It's a really good example of modern gear with an old school touch, and I like this.
Yeah. Well, I even find like the fact that you rewind on it and it takes time rather than you just move your cursor. I mean, it
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
just changes how I work, and sometimes it makes me say, you know what, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep moving
That's
rather
right.
than,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, deal with little inconveniences like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, Something else too that I've noticed that happens is when you have all of this stuff, you're if I had one synthesizer, virtual synthesizer in my computer, it would be so precious. I would use it, learn it inside and out and everything. But when you
That's
have
right.
600, they all
Yeah,
are so much less value. And
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, right. And like something I was thinking about with what you're doing with these releases on, say, the Sega Genesis or the floppy disk in particular, is that like take what like if you have a Spotify account or an Apple Music account, you can listen to a song and then 5 seconds in decide you don't like it and then listen to any of the other infinite songs that are out there. In the old days, you bought a record or you bought a CD or a tape and you put it on and you
Right.
you, you had spent time with it. Now,
Yeah.
what you're doing is, I mean, if you're gonna first of all, find your Sega Genesis or find a floppy disk somewhere, they're really invested in your music, and I think
That's right.
probably the conventional wisdom would be like, well, no one's ever gonna bother. That's too much trouble.
That's right. I've that's right. That's really a point. I like music to invest. I like people to invest some time
A little
in
work.
order to get or work to be able to listen to music. I like people to celebrate the music. I like people
Hmm.
to to enjoy music after they did a lot of work for it.
Yeah.
I like people to get rewarded with something, and exactly the point that you've been talking about on Spotify, for example. Everything is available, and you can get it instantly, and it's nothing special anymore. It's not rewarding.
Mhm.
It's something you do. Of course, I use Spotify sometimes myself, and it's okay if you listen to music in the background, or some music. It's like fast food music.
Yeah.
You like McDonald's, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you really work for your music, and if you really invest some time for music, it's like going to a high class restaurant, and it's so much better.
Mm.
And I really like to become music again more adventurous. And
Mhm.
I think, of course, a lot of people don't bother and don't care. It's their decision. I don't force anyone to buy my cartridge. In fact, I also released my album on Spotify. You can listen on Spotify if you like.
Mhm.
But I really recommend the more tedious way, but it's more rewarding. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I can bring this back into the world of video games too, because I have a pretty heavy background there too.
Yeah.
I did the same thing as you, sampled all my old video games, um, and use them for like instead of like a white noise riser, why not this
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
space shuttle or this car driving away from like Streets of Rage on the Sega Genesis?
Yeah, I
you
did
know,
this a lot. I did this a lot back then because, because there was actually no way to make sound with game consoles. It's
Mm.
just something that came up last couple of years and months. Yeah.
Yeah, I have this thing called the MIDI NES, which is a cartridge you put in your
Right.
Nintendo,
Yeah.
and it has the
Right.
mid. You
Right.
know what I'm talking about? It has the MIDI cable that comes out of it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. 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 Of course, I have
s-
this too. I have
you
this
do,
too.
yeah, good. It's super
Something.
cool.
The midification of game consoles. It's really something that
Mm,
got popular the last few years ago, and that actually made it possible to use consoles as MIDI synthesizers, and
mhm.
it really felt like God sent gift from heaven for me because right then I wasn't forced anymore to sample the sounds from
Mhm.
video games, but make music with the game console itself. And so, as you've been talking about the MIDI and NAS, that was also one of my first MIDI stuff for consoles too. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, actually, I think that's probably the first like, if you want to call it, it was like the first like synthesizer I ever bought was that cartridge that goes in the Nintendo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was also some stuff like the little sound DJ for Game Boy,
Yes.
or the Game Boy was very, very heavy into was it's still a good instrument for making electronic music, and
Mhm.
but the stuff like Gen MDM, this is a MIDI cartridge for the Mega Drive that I was really using a lot, just came, I think, in 2014. Yeah,
Mm.
and it's quite new stuff, but it's really useful.
I haven't seen that one. That sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah, you can actually use the Mega Drive as a MIDI synthesizer, and the Mega Drive is a very good FM synthesizer. But I think we'll be talking about this in a minute.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm involved in is this very huge video game expo that we do on Long Island. My best friend started it. Um,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
just for his love of old school video games, he decided to put on this day where he would set up all these consoles and people could come and play. And the first
Yeah.
year he did it, so many people came that we couldn't keep letting him in the building because it was a
Yeah.
fire hazard. So that this I think we just finished was the 5th year, and it's really grown a lot. And close to 5,000 people came, and,
Cool.
and
Right.
my job is to do the music. And
Nice.
so we have musical guests that perform, and in between, I'm playing. usually vinyl records of just really
Yeah.
video game music pressed to vinyl, probably without any regard to any sort of copyright. But the Sega Genesis stuff is just so good. The Streets of Rage, the Shinobi,
Oh
the
yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
that's I mean, it's like it's I mean, there's a lot of great video game music, but this is just music I'm happy to put on and just listen to, and the
Yeah.
sound of that synthesizer in there is incredible.
Absolutely. I really think the music of the Genesis console really stands out
Mm,
because it's so different to other game music because of the really high quality FM synthesizer that is actually built in the Sega Genesis.
mhm.
It's kind of DX7 that is built into this console, and it's really a really powerful FM synthesizer, and that makes the music of the Genesis really stand out.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, they just I just got it maybe last week. They just released it. The company Plogue, maybe you're familiar with them based on your interest.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
They
yeah.
they
They
came out with
released a very good piece of software chips, and really
y-
like them.
yeah, for they did the Mega Drive version of their you know
Yeah,
um I think it's called ChipSynth MD if I'm not
right,
mistaken.
right, right. Yeah,
And what seems to be a really fun aspect is that you can load in, and I haven't tried this yet. I actually watched Cuckoo do it on his YouTube channel, where
yeah,
he had some of the old Genesis games loaded in there, some of the VGM files,
right, right, right.
and you're able to isolate the specific tracks and listen to them back, which
Yeah,
just seems like so much fun,
that's
like
pretty cool.
to really
I
like
know this
dissect it.
software. This is a very, very good emulation of the Mega Drive
Mm.
of the You call it Genesis in the States,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We call
exactly.
it Mega Drive. Well, it's a very good emulation, and the guys from Ploak did a very amazing job. I know the software, and they are very well known as a very high quality
Mhm.
software developers, and good job.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into some of those soundtracks. Um,
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you though, about like the just some of like the nitty gritty stuff of exactly how you're programming this music into the
yeah.
Genesis, because you're not using MIDI, right? You're writing the
No,
code.
no. This was a very, very new way of working for me because, as I said, I was making music on quite common gear like Akai and Yamaha samplers, and later on digital audio workstations. Of course, Ableton. Of course, propeller heads, Reason,
Hmm.
and I was using quite common software and hardware until a few years ago.
The
But
Maximo Revolt.
Maximal. Right, right, right. But for for my album Limited, and especially for this album Techno to Mystic, I've been using trackers only.
Hmm.
Trackers are music programs that where you more write the music and don't play it. You program it. And
A lot
for
of
Techno to Mystic,
numbers, right? Like so.
numbers, lot of numbers, and almost nothing in real time. Not jamming, not probably not so fun as recording stuff. More
Well,
kind of like playing chess or something like
yeah.
this.
It seems
But
like numbers and work.
yeah,
If it looks anything like LSDJ, the Little Sound DJ.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and
It's
it's
the sound DJ is also a tracker, and for Techno Optimistic, I've used a tracker program called Devil Mask. This
mhm,
is a program that um, lets me program VGM files. You mentioned them
mhm,
before. VGM files. This is the native file format that gets read from the Genesis console. Yeah, you have to program the music in VGM in order to get played by the Mega Drive. And with Devil Mask, I was able to do so. And I've produced my whole album Techno Optimistic with Devil Mask. And I think the whole album consists 80% of only code that drives the sound chip, and maybe 20% some short one-shot samples, like kick drums or snares or some vocal files or some synth steps or something like that. But really, it's mainly just code-driven music that gets almost entirely gets generated in real time by the FM synthesizer in the MegaDrive, um, and therefore this music feels kind of alive. When every time you play it, it gets generated in real time, and it's really something really different than I've did before. Yeah.
Right. Well, one of my plans for next year at our expo is I want to get a copy, of your cartridge and set up the Genesis and put it in there
Yeah. Yeah.
and have that rather than to go along with the records. I've sort of had this idea of maybe finding like certain games that have like the sound test option.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
playing it back that
Mm,
way.
mm, mm.
And now like
Okay.
with your cartridge, it's like even more like I got to do that. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, we also produced a very convenient player. I did this together with some two friends of mine, which are very popular coders in the scene here in Europe.
Mhm.
Uh, in the scene called demo scene. This is a scene which consisting of computer arts and multimedia arts, and these two guys are called Kabuto and Exozet. They've
Uh,
programmed the whole interface together with me from Techno-Optimistic. So Techno-Optimistic is not only a music cartridge, but when you insert it, you have a really nice player program where you can choose the tracks you like, and then you can also pause the tracks. And when you pause the tracks, then you can freeze the music, and then the notes hang, and then you can do some weird stuff with this. And it's it's slightly interactive, yeah.
that's cool.
But um, we're really proud about the video clip that we also managed to squeeze onto the cartridge.
Mhm.
It's, the video clip for the single of the album. It's called Red Eyes,
Mhm.
and this tune got its own video clip with some real-time animated 3D graphics in the Genesis. This is stuff that was quite impossible to do on the Genesis, but these two coders managed to make it possible, and really proud of the video clip, and it's part of the album too.
Yeah, I saw that video. You must have it posted on YouTube somewhere or something.
Yeah. This is also running completely in real time from an unmodified Genesis console, and it
And
was really hard work.
yeah, because I was looking at it, I was like, this doesn't look like something the Genesis can handle. It,
Yeah, especially the 3D graphic parts, because Genesis is really not a console that is made for 3D graphics. It's
Mhm.
it's too weak actually, but somehow these two guys managed this, and we're really happy in the end. And yeah.
Wow. Well, I guess perhaps maybe since they didn't have to make the entire game, maybe they had the space or something to let that
Who
happen.
knows? Who knows? I
Yeah.
think maybe we make a game. Who knows?
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be super cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, what a feat to do that. And it's when you started this, were you confident you'd be able to pull it off? Like look, if like this was my idea, I probably wouldn't have done it just because I would have probably thought like I wouldn't be able to figure out how to do it first of all, but I'd be so worried that no one would ever listen to it just because of like the
Yeah.
challenges. But it
Yeah.
seems like the very opposite has happened, where it's generated some really nice attention for you.
That's right. That's right. Of course, there were moments where I had some doubts, and I was asking myself, "Is this really a good idea,
Yeah.
or not?" But
How did you deal with that?
well,
Because I think everyone goes
well,
through
this
that
is
in some shape.
yeah, that's right. This is something I am dealing with. I think my whole career.
Right.
Yeah, I always have moments where I have some pretty weird ideas where I think of them will this work? Will this sell?
Hmm.
But in the end, I always go for it, and this is this is also the same thing that was back then with my label when I started
Hmm.
this. The tune was very crazy, and a lot of established labels turned it down before said it's too stressy, too chaotic, too lo-fi, and but I did it, and it was a huge success. And the same thing happened with Techno Optimistic, and
Mm.
I think you always have to fight the doubts and to just do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just forget about business also. What is
Mm.
business? I think art is more important than
Right.
business.
Mm.
And in order to achieve this, you really have to kill the businessman in you and just being an artist, really.
Hmm.
And just if it's just for a brief moment, but kill the businessman, really.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
have to imagine, as a record label, they in order to sustain, they need to make some money and they need
Absolutely,
things that.
absolutely. A lot of record labels are very in difficult situations,
Hmm.
and especially today, where a lot of pressure on the whole business, and one
Yeah.
decision can crush your label and stuff like this. And of course, I can absolutely understand executives that are hesitant or
Yeah.
maybe don't want to take the risk, but really, I am a one-man artist and a one-man company, and I'm able to take the risk, and I'm really proud to take the risk.
Mm.
Yeah.
Were you did you pitch the floppy disk idea to the label, was that after you'd already made your own?
No, the floppy disk album was released on my own label, and I've never thought about it to pitch it on some other labels because
I figured if you did, you probably have a pretty funny story. Just the
probably I
reaction
think
of like,
a
"You wanna
lot
do
of
what?"
labels would what yeah really
You
I
realize
don't
that.
think I don't think a lot of labels would understand this. Yeah.
No, understandably too.
Yeah, sure.
But the point is true, I think, that when you put in a little bit of work for something, there is more of a
Yeah,
satisfaction. For
right.
instance, the video game thing, um, they've come out with all these emulators where you can play all the old games on your computer, and it's
Yeah,
super easy. You don't have to blow into the cartridge anymore, and none of
yeah.
that stuff. But I think as soon as I got those emulators, I kind of stopped playing everything. And it wasn't until I dusted off the old systems and just, you sit down and you put the one game in and you just play the one game.
Yeah.
When you have the emulator, you play it for 5 seconds and you're like, "So what else do we have? What else do we
That's
have?"
right. This is exactly the same way I'm feeling too.
Hmm.
But
Well,
um,
that's with music too. What other sound do I have? What other synth do I have? What other sample do I have?
that's absolutely right. If you have everything, if everything is available, then it's not interesting anymore.
Yeah.
If it's not available, if you have to work for it, or if you have to seek out for it, or have to do other things for it, it's interesting because you have to
Mm.
invest time, you have to invest some effort, and you have to really work for it. And then I think stuff gets interesting when you invest time in it. Yeah.
Right.
And, same thing with the video games that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I was finding myself in a similar situation, and I had a lot of games when I was a child, sold them all to buy the new console
Hmm.
back then. And but I started collecting games like 5 or 6 years ago again to have the real deal,
Yeah.
to being able to insert the game cartridge to the console and dust it off, and to have the full experience. Yeah,
Right.
because I think the emulation experience is similar like with Spotify. You have everything, you can have everything, but you end up not enjoying anything. Yeah.
It is funny because I can think back to my youth, and it was with music and video games where you'd go out and buy the album or the new game, and you might play it for or listen to it for the first 10 minutes and realize you don't like it. And then, but you
Yeah.
still, you worked at it. You're like, "Oh, I'm going to find a way to like this. Maybe it'll grow on me. Maybe there's something I'm not
Right,
seeing
right.
yet." And a lot of stuff that I
Yeah.
turned out to love took a little bit of work to get into.
That's right. That's right. It's like you spend $50 on a video game, then you don't like it, and then you think, "Oh man, I spent $50. Is there not something that is good here?" Then you force yourself, and then you find some aspects that are good, probably. And
Mhm.
I really understand this. Yeah.
I think some of my favorite albums, the first time I heard them, didn't really move me that much. But
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
getting used to it a few times, they say that our brains like things they're familiar with. There's that some
Yeah.
sort of thing. So maybe it's something to do with that. But it might just be the
Yeah.
value too, like you said, just you put in that money. And when you go on
Yeah.
Spotify, you hear the new record by whoever, you're not invested in it. Who cares? It didn't cost you anything except what you'd pay for everything.
Definitely, definitely. It's like if something is seems kind of worthless, you don't you don't feel the urge to dive in. You don't feel the urge
Yeah.
to get to get deep into it. Then you just skip it and next.
Hmm.
But if you only have like one game or one album or two or three, then you give it another shot.
Yeah. You go deeper, you learn it.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to program Techno Optimistic?
Actually, that was a very slow process,
Yeah.
and it took me longer than the stuff I did with digital audio workstations.
Hmm.
Um, well, programming a track is a very tedious way of working. It's not very fun, actually, but it takes a very long time. I think the whole Techno Optimistic album took me around like 3 or 4 months to produce it, and this is for me a very long time because um, some some tracks with Ableton or with Reason or with even with my old samplers, I was able to pull off in 1 or 2 days,
Hmm.
1 or 2 hours even sometimes. But programming top Techno Optimistic was something that was much deeper than I did before.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I guess you probably, like you said, you're not really jamming, you're not really playing, so you're kind of putting some values into the
Yeah,
software
yeah,
and
right.
then
So
listen back.
every sound is programmed, every event is programmed, every filter movement, every synthesizer movement is programmed. So it's really music writing in a very literal way.
Hmm.
And as I said, I think this album turned me into a music programmer. Probably being a musician is still very much more fun. Jamming out with synthesizers and samplers is much more fun, of course. But being a music programmer gives me much more control over the music.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not fun, but I have more control in the end, and I feel the tracks are um, more focused on some essence of an idea than the stuff I did before.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, are you playing this stuff live?
yeah. I'm just in the process of transforming all the techno-optimistic stuff into a format that makes it possible to play it live. Of
Yeah,
course, yeah.
I'd like to.
I've
What is
I've
that format?
translating it.
Because
I've retranslating it
yeah.
again. I'm taking out the tracker files again and looking at all the values and exporting them into some old school samplers,
Mhm.
and of course recording some samples and some loops and stuff like this. And yeah, I'm building a very new live set of Techno Optimistic, and I think in 2020 I will have have a bunch of gigs with this, and
Hmm.
Techno Optimistic Live will be then. I will be again a musician then.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you expect that to look? Is it going to be in a software like Ableton Live? Is it going to be in a sampler, or maybe like
Mhm. Well, it will be a mixture of MIDified game consoles.
Oh,
On the
okay.
one hand, I will use MegaDrive as a MIDI synthesizer with the cartridge called Gen MDM.
Hmm.
This is a kind of cartridge you stick into the MegaDrive, and then you have a MIDI port. Yeah,
Hmm.
this way you can use it as a FM MIDI synthesizer. And yeah, I will use it. I will then use another live sampler, the old MC909 from Roland.
Right.
It's still a very powerful groove box where you have the old school sounds from Roland, and a very powerful sequencer. And I will use this groove box as a kind of master, MIDI master for all the stuff, and then saving a lot of loops and a lot of samples in the groove box, and then just using the MegaDrive as a MIDI synthesizer to play some key elements of the tracks live.
Okay.
And well, it will be a mixture of common old school music gear and game consoles.
Nice. And any computer involved, or is it going to be totally without the
No, no.
laptop?
I think I will also use a computer for some longer samples, some longer loops. Of course, Ableton, and probably also the computer for some live visuals, for some
Uh-huh.
synchronized visuals. And so it will be very a mixture of old school samplers, digital audio workstations, and MIDified game consoles.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah,
nice. That sounds like a lot of fun. And
yeah.
uh,
I think playing live will be then fun again.
yeah, all that
Yeah,
work will have paid off into
after all this work, right,
yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, l- look, I think I said it in the intro. Sometimes I don't realize what I'm saying when I do the little intro to the show, but I think I said something about the pain and suffering of making music, and
Yeah, yeah, really.
it's
Yeah.
real in every form. As much as it is a lot of fun, and the payoff is nice when you produce something you're really proud of. A lot of it is suffering and
That's right. That's
challenging.
right. That's right. A lot. I think Tech Optimistic was the most painful album for me so far. But
Yeah, worse than the floppy disk, huh?
even worse than the floppy disk,
Yeah.
indeed, because programming Tech Optimistic really got me diving deep into values and code and stuff like this.
Mhm.
And it was probably the most unfunny album to produce so far. But in the end, it sounds really much
Mm.
the most fun album I did, and very rewarding also for me.
Yeah, it must be so cool to like get that cartridge and be like, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And by the way, 3 to 4 months on an album is really not that long for most people.
Well, for my
For your workflow.
way of working, it's kind of long because, as I said, I was very used to produce stuff almost on the fly and live
Mhm.
with Ableton Live, and writing music this way was really different for me. Yeah,
Is that something you strive for, to get your music done fast and quickly?
I've been into fast and quickly before my album Limited, before 2017.
Mhm.
I've had some albums that I've produced in like a week,
Mm.
or tracks that I produced in 1 or 2 hours. I've once produced a track called Trump after a famous speech of your president.
Oh, yeah?
One friend from the magazine Vice wrote about it, yeah,
Hmm.
and posted this video on YouTube. And we've been following each other on Facebook, like, because we worked together on some other Vice article before. And he posted this video from Donald Trump who wanted to become president back then. And everybody was laughing at it, and everybody was thinking, I don't think this will happen.
No way.
and and so Wise posted an article about this, and my friend sent me this on Facebook, and I was really into sampling world politics back then. I
Right.
was making music from news headlines
Mhm.
and sampling stuff from TV and stuff like this. I think that was sometime in 2015, maybe 2015, right? And well, I've sampled the speech of Donald Trump and made a track in about half an hour from it, and then I've sent it back to Wise, and he was like, "Wow, I just sent this to you a couple of minutes ago." And I've made a track from it, and it got very huge somehow, and was very popular. And I wasn't expecting this, but it was a kind of joke.
Yeah.
And so, just to put it in short, I was really into doing music fast and quick back then.
What was the name of that
But
track? I can put a link for everyone to hear.
it's called Trump,
Oh, it's called
only
Trump.
Trump.
Okay. Okay.
It's called Trump. Yeah. It was made from the first speech where he announced that he wants to run for president.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so I've made a track from this, and it got huge suddenly. And
That's
well,
cool.
but when producing the album I did on floppy and techno optimistic, I think this was the end of fast and quick for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of had to be, I guess. I think there's
yeah,
something
yeah.
to be said about when you capture your ideas when they're happening, when they're fresh. I think like you stay in the fun part, and you also you don't lose sight of the vision as easily. Sometimes when you come back to something after some time has passed, you're not in the same mindset or
Right, that's
feeling.
right, that's right. I also really like the workflow of, let's say, Ableton Live,
Hmm.
because you can do everything live. And I've actually, most of my tracks before Limited and Techno Optimistic, I've recorded completely live and
Hmm.
didn't arrange it. Uh, I just recorded a stereo out and then did some brief edits, and that's it, right?
Right.
And I always liked the fast and quick way,
Mm.
but with Techno Optimistic and Limited, I've put an end to this.
Well, that's a cool way because, like, as we've kind of alluded to it, you can really get caught up in the editing, the details, the fixing, and you never
Yeah,
decide on
yeah.
anything. I think.
I always avoided this because if I ever did arranging like this, I would never finish a track, because
Yeah.
moving blocks around was never my thing. No,
Right.
no, no.
Yeah, and it's never really done. You just go, at
It's
least
never
when
really done. Right,
when
right.
you go with that like performance, well, that's what I did. That's, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
maybe a little bit here or there, but I think capturing the spirit is nice. And some of my favorite versions of songs I've done were the first demo tapes where the energy was there and you were just excited.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the energy of doing something new and doing something you never did before is something really important.
Hmm.
It's You find this all throughout the music history. The first albums of some rock bands are probably the best, which they recorded in their garage or in
Uh-huh.
their bedrooms. And the the things you do when something is fresh, I think this is the most thrilling part of making music. And I always seek out for other ways of producing music, and never stick around too much in
Mm.
same ways of making music.
Right. Do you plan to do another Sega version of a new album in the future, or did you did you drive yourself too crazy doing that?
I'm not sure. I think
Not sure.
process of making Tech Optimistic was really hard for me, and probably this chapter is done. I'm not sure if I will do another Genesis music album, but I think I will dive into another game consoles.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
So that concept is still exciting for you. Working with,
absolutely. Because
yeah.
I think a lot of old game consoles are very powerful synthesizers
Hmm.
actually, and still not explored, and still a lot of things to do, a lot of things to dive into, and this is something I will finish to do. I will continue to do.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've proven that too, and that whole community of people using Game Boys and modded systems to produce music has really been fun to watch, and my small
Yeah, yeah.
participation has
It's
been
really
fun too.
the community is also pretty huge. The chiptune community is pretty huge and pretty
Yeah,
creative, and a lot of innovations and a lot of exciting things are happening. Not only with game consoles, but also with some old home computers like the Commodore C64,
yeah,
which got an amazing sound synthesizer in it, and still offers some possibilities, some unexplored possibilities. And, I think there's still a lot of things to explore.
hmm, that's cool. Yeah, I look forward to seeing what people do. It's always exciting and interesting, and it's nice to see that that stuff is sticking around. Um,
Right. I think it's the thrill of limitations,
yeah.
of dealing with limitations, and always creating some ways to to achieve even the most impossible things and make
Mhm.
them possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think our culture is experiencing, at least on some level, like there's a little pushback against all the infinite possibilities. You see a lot of the DAW-less jamming where people are using these groove boxes, and I mean, just
Right.
all these like devices that are coming out these days. The OP1, the OPZ, the Korg
Yeah.
Volcas, the Electron
Yeah.
boxes are all, I think, you know, coming out in in spite of the computers, and to
That's
purposely
right. That's
offer you
right.
those limitations and workflows.
That's right. I really like a lot of new gear, and I really like the way also that Roland is going with their
The
new stuff. And
boutiques, those,
the boutiques, yeah,
yeah.
and especially the TR8S,
Hmm.
which is very old school but very new school, because it integrates seamlessly into digital audio workstations, and I think the combination of old school techniques and the convenience of new software is something that's really interesting. And I always try to include old stuff into new stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, and this is something that fascinates me.
It's a big part of how I work too.
Yeah,
I try to emulate a lot of the things that I used to see as problems in my music, whether it's
yeah,
tape degradation or
yeah, yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
unquantized stuff, lower bit rates and all that.
Mhm,
I think
exactly.
it's very easy to get too clean and too perfect.
Yeah, I think it's cool to work with the past, but in a futuristic way.
Yeah.
And
There's certain things we can do without, certain things
yeah,
that are nice we don't have to worry about anymore. But undo is
yeah,
kind of cool when you record, so you didn't accidentally record.
absolutely, absolutely. And getting rid of cables and
Cables, yeah.
yeah, I absolutely hate cables, and this is some old school stuff I don't like.
Yeah.
and and I really like that a lot of stuff is getting done via USB, or sometimes even via Bluetooth now, and that this is something that I really appreciate, and I hope it gets evolved even more in the future.
Mm.
Getting rid of audio cables, hate audio cables,
Yeah.
always did.
Well, that's nothing worse, right? When like you're trying to do something and like you realize you've got a bad cable, and it's just
Yeah, absolutely. So
yeah,
annoying, so annoying.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's just and they're not fun to buy, you know, it's not like you're
No,
getting a new
no,
piece of
no.
gear. It's exciting.
And they are really not fun to organize, because
Yeah.
in my studio, I always end up with a lot of chaos,
Mhm.
wires and chaos, and yeah, don't like chaos.
One of the, best things I ever bought that is, like, really unexciting, you know, was a package, like, on Amazon of these, I don't know if you can see my video or not,
I can see, yeah.
but I got these, like, just these little Velcro twist ties.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
You know, and,
I
like,
know,
you can
absolutely,
hear it on my
absolutely,
microphone
yeah.
here. But
Very usual,
yeah,
very useful.
just to, like, keep these on my wires has been,
Yeah.
you know, it's sometimes it's these little things that are not glamorous, but when you can just reach in the drawer and actually pull out a cable and not have 17 other ones that wanna come with it,
Absolutely,
you know, that
absolutely.
speeds things up a bit, and,
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, amongst my friends, I buy them as for gifts for people. I'm like, look, I don't know if you're gonna ever use these, but if you do, you're gonna love them.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it's like I could go for a day without cables. I wouldn't be too sad.
absolutely, absolutely.
So I guess the next thing for you really is to get the show on the road, the techno optimistic live
Yeah,
performance.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
goal.
I think I'm almost done with it, and just fine-tuning. Oh, you have a dog too, yeah?
I have too. She's been so good right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, she just woke up, I think, and it's getting close to when I
Okay.
feed her.
Alright, alright. Yeah, the final part is, like, taking Techno Optimistic on the road, and, almost done with it, and,
Mhm.
almost just some fine-tuning, and, I think I'll be ready sometime in beginning of 2020, and
Nice.
then, yeah, we'll see how this will end up, and how this will work. But I'm very optimistic. I'm very techno optimistic.
Yeah. Are you planning on going to the States by any chance?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've just had my debut show in 2018 in New York, and I
I wish I
think
could
it
have made
was
that. Yeah,
October 2018. Yeah,
I would have loved to have seen that.
New
I'm in New
York.
York myself. Yeah,
I did a floppy DJ live set then. Yeah,
that's cool.
and it was pretty cool. And I think I absolutely have to return again, and probably do another a real USA tour, because I didn't play a lot in the US
Hmm.
throughout my career, just a few times. And well, yeah, of course, I have to do a US tour, and this will be very interesting. Yeah.
Well, on a side note, you know, we won't obviously do this on the podcast, but I'd love to talk to you. I think you'd be such a cool fit at the video game expo that we do in August. You know, I'll just plant that seed for you because
Yeah,
what's cool.
yeah,
It's a video game loving crowd, but we're trying to make the music also a big part of it. And
perfect. Sounds really interesting,
yeah,
because as I really said, techno optimistic is something that reaches out to video gamers and music fans at the same time, and
yeah,
this is something that I'm really happy about it, because it's the two two favorite things that I also like,
yeah, yeah. Same
and
for me.
being able to reach out these two crowds, it's something very special for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is. You know, part of the thing that's like keeping like a lot of these old games alive and these old systems is just the quality of the content. The games are so fun. Of course there's the nostalgia thing,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
really
yeah.
cool to see you know, people like yourself, and there's even some game developers too still for these systems that are putting out new content. It's nice to see
Absolutely.
like that there's life.
Yeah, there are a lot of new games for old consoles, and
Yeah.
I think this is really brilliant, and I really appreciate it. And I'm also a huge collector of video games, and this is I almost have more video games than records. I have a lot of records too, but being a very heavy collector throughout the last years, I've bought a lot of old video games too, especially MegaDrive, Genesis video games. I
Yeah,
really collect them heavily and have a lot of them.
that's super cool.
Yeah,
Well, listen, I'll let you get going here. We'll wrap this up.
cool.
But where do you like to send people the most? Would this be like your Bandcamp page? Is there a website you'd like to have people go to check you out?
I think it's definitely Bandcamp. Just visit my Bandcamp. You can check out every album I did there, uploaded everything. And remute.bandcamp.com is really the place to go.
Cool. Yeah, and it's got links out to the social media there too,
Cool.
which is
All right,
nice.
nice.
And
Cool.
yeah, I definitely think anyone listening, if you want to, something fresh and something that's like kind of testing out new boundaries with even just with that old gear, but just it's very forward thinking in that this idea of like rejecting the maximalism, as you said, and this idea
Yeah.
that like creativity really comes out of our limitations and our challenges of ourselves. I think your work is such a great example of that. And I think a lot of people that are making music might be struggling because there are too many options. And you're an inspiration for the minimalism or the outside the box, or, whatever you want to call it. I think your work is really inspiring in
Great.
that way.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So
Thank you very much for having me on your show. Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll say goodbye and then we'll wrap up. Go to remute.bandcamp.com, everybody. Check out Remute and, bust out your old MegaDrive or your Genesis and pop on Techno Optimistic. And it's super cool. So thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And thank you, Denis. And have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.